On this Thursday night, conviction overturned. An appeal court rules mistakes were made in the rape trial of disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein. The stunned reaction from his accusers.
This today is an act of institutional betrayal.
Billions for an electric future.
This is a game changer for the country and for the auto sector.
What the latest big investment of public money could mean for EV manufacturing in Canada. Absolute immunity. The U.S. Supreme Court weighs arguments over whether Donald Trump is immune from prosecution. Plus, he was the soundtrack to Saturday Night Hockey.
What a goal! What a move! Oh, baby!
The legacy of Canadian broadcasting legend Bob Cole.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. 4 years after he was convicted of rape, New York State's top court has ruled disgraced movie producer Harvey Weinstein did not receive a fair trial. It means his conviction, which was pivotal in the Me Too movement, has been overturned. The New York Court of Appeals found the trial judge made a crucial mistake. This does not mean that Weinstein is a free man, but the decision has stunned the many women who broke their silence and accused Weinstein, who was once the most powerful producer in Hollywood. Eric Sorensen has our top story tonight.
At the center of public anger in the Me Too movement was Harvey Weinstein. When Weinstein was convicted of sexually assaulting 2 women in 2020, it seemed like a turning point for the legal system that historically has intimidated victims and held relatively few accountable.
I'm just in awe that we saw justice today and this could happen.
To bolster their case, prosecutors had called several other women to testify that they'd been abused by Weinstein. Today, New York's Court of Appeals ruled it was wrong to do so. In a 4-3 vote, the High Court concluded the trial court erroneously admitted testimony of uncharged alleged prior sexual acts against persons other than the complainants of the underlying crimes, in effect prejudicing the jury.
The jury was looking at Harvey Weinstein, looking at his character, this propensity to act, and not looking at the crimes that were charged in New York.
Activists say the legal system has let women down again.
This today is an act of institutional betrayal. And our institutions betray survivors of male sexual violence.
Others worry that abused women will be discouraged from coming forward.
It's enraging, certainly, in thinking about what it's going to mean for all of those victim survivors and any victim survivor who wants to engage with the criminal legal system.
Weinstein's lawyer praised the High Court.
Today's legal ruling is a great day for America.
Weinstein was one of the world's top movie producers. He controlled the career paths of countless celebrities and wannabe stars. Hollywood turned away from rumors about his conduct. Only later did accusations publicly emerge from scores of women of assault and abuse.
We are devastated for the survivors who are connected to this case.
Still, Weinstein will not get out of jail. It's expected he'll be transferred from this prison in New York to another in California, where a 2022 conviction for rape still stands. And for women wanting a legal system more responsive to victims of sexual violence, the fight goes on.
Male sexual violence may knock us down, but we get right back up.
Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
A jury has been selected in the trial of a Winnipeg man suspected of killing 4 Indigenous women. 9 women and 3 men were chosen, along with 2 alternates. Jeremy Skibicki is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and a 4th unidentified woman the community has named Buffalo Woman. Her body has not been found. The partial remains of Contois were discovered in 2022. Police believe the remains of the 2 other women are in the Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg. Skibicki has pleaded not guilty. The trial is set to start next week. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau calls it the largest auto investment in Canadian history. It is a $15 billion plan to build new Honda auto plants in Ontario. The project promises to create about 1,000 jobs, but mining critical materials is key to its operation. Mike Drolet reports on how the project could re-energize Canada's auto sector if it can clear all the roadblocks.
This is the end of the line at the Honda plant in Alliston, Ontario. Every minute, like clockwork, the finishing touches are put on a new vehicle. It's a sight to behold, yet few visitors to the plant took notice because of what was being announced just meters away.
This is big, folks. This is historic. This is a game changer for the country and for the auto sector.
The groundbreaking deal will see Honda invest $15 billion into 4 new manufacturing plants. The company's first electric vehicle assembly plant, a standalone EV battery plant, as well as 2 facilities that will focus on the critical minerals side of the equation, likely to be built in Northern Ontario. Canada's auto sector, which not long ago was considered to be on life support, has been re-energized with investments in Windsor and St. Thomas, Ontario, as well as just outside of Montreal.
I think what we've seen in the last 2 years is the total sum of investment of the last 40 years repeated in a very short period.
But none of this has been exactly cheap for taxpayers. VW has promised $13 billion in subsidies, Stellantis 15, and Northvolt another 7. And now Honda has been promised upwards of $5 billion in tax credits. The argument is that without these investments, these companies would have set up shop elsewhere.
But again, countries around the world are trying to, throw money at different companies to try and draw in investment. And yes, we need to be responsible and competitive with that. But that's not why Honda and other great companies are continuing to choose to invest in Canada.
Money aside, the lure for automakers is proximity to critical minerals like lithium and cobalt needed for EV batteries, a sector of the industry that's long been dominated by China. Canada is a decade behind in critical mining, yet the hope is that partnering with automakers will kick it into high gear.
You're absolutely right that there are more pieces to this puzzle than just opening up a plant and getting some part suppliers in place. You need to go right down that value chain, right to the mines and to the critical materials. And that's something that, frankly, we don't have a ton of experience in as the automotive industry, but that's why you're seeing these partnerships develop right to the mines with the automakers themselves.
Mike, how realistic is it that enough critical minerals will soon be mined in Canada to make that end-to-end supply chain dream a reality?
Well, for the first time ever, Bloomberg has put Canada at the top of its lithium-ion battery supply chain rankings, ahead of China. And yes, Canada has a pair of sites operating in Manitoba and Quebec, but as of today, not a single lithium mine is operational in Ontario. And that has to change if plants like these are going to hope to get the critical minerals they need to produce batteries. Donna?
Okay, Mike Drolet in Alliston, Ontario. Thanks. It's only April and there are already more than 170 fires burning in BC and Alberta. This fire near Chetwynd, BC prompted an evacuation order last night. It's since been downgraded to an alert, but the fire is still burning out of control. In Alberta, 64 new fires started this week. They're all now either under control or out. Because it is so dry, fire restrictions and burn bans have been imposed in both provinces. Alberta's UCP government is pushing ahead with legislation that will widely expand its powers, allowing it to step into local councils and fire individual members and compel councils to repeal bylaws the province doesn't like. Calgary's mayor says it has the potential to change the face of municipal government.
But I'm left asking why they've inserted themselves into municipal government in a manner that actually strips the voting public's right to elect the council that they believe is the best to serve them.
Alberta's Municipal Affairs Minister claims the new powers are justified to ensure fair elections and accountability from municipal leaders. He says they'll only be used as a last resort, and the criteria for removing councillors would be decided by Premier Danielle Smith's cabinet on a case-by-case basis. He says the province needs the legislation to ensure municipalities are governing affairs that are within their jurisdiction. The Ontario First Nation of Aamjiwnaang is reporting new extremely high readings of the cancer-causing chemical benzene in the air. And late today, the chief declared a local state of emergency in the community because of what he calls the ongoing and excessive discharge of benzene. Residents there have long complained air pollution from industrial activity makes them sick. And today, the First Nation said governments aren't doing enough to protect its people.
Plastic pollution has been able to increase in my nation due to lack of regulations that would protect our rights and our health from plastic pollution.
Ontario's Environment Ministry says the Ineos Styrolution plant, meters from the First Nation, is the primary source of past benzene exposure on the north side of the community. The ministry issued a provincial order giving the company 1 week to provide a written plan to reduce benzene emission levels. The plant has been temporarily shut down since the weekend. Whether or not former American presidents are immune from prosecution is the question at the heart of a hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court. The case centers on former President Donald Trump and whether immunity shields him from criminal charges in the attempt to overturn the 2020 presidential election. But the implications are far broader. As Neetu Garcha reports, what the court decides will shape U.S. democracy for years to come.
Heavy with references to theoretical assassination attempts and bribery, much of this historic proceeding revolved around the debate over what constitutes official presidential conduct. With questions like, how about if a president orders the military to stage a coup? Of the 9 justices hearing the case, 3 were nominated by Donald Trump during his presidency. Conservative Justice Samuel Alito brought up the old saw about indicting a ham sandwich, referring to the belief indictments are easy to secure and don't mean a likelihood of guilt. Alito adding, this case will have effects that go far beyond this particular prosecution.
The seriousness of these cases couldn't be higher. They raise the most fundamental question in all of American history, which is the president above the law and under what circumstances?
Trump's lawyer faced questions like, if there's no threat of criminal prosecution, what prevents the president from just doing whatever he wants? Contrary to prosecutors, Trump's lawyer argued a former president has to be impeached and convicted before he can be criminally prosecuted.
The court seems likely to reject immunity in all circumstances, but possibly recognize some immunity for core executive functions.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor made clear her opposition to the Trump legal team's position, saying she was having a hard time envisioning immunity for a president who creates and submits false documents, orders the assassination of a political rival, and any number of other criminal acts. As protesters like Lori Woodward Garcia gathered outside the court, a key question remains: when will a decision be made?
This Supreme Court decision could throw our country and the world, quite frankly, into tyranny.
A ruling could require several months of lower court proceedings. While skepticism towards Trump's claims of absolute immunity was clear in court, the timing of the Supreme Court's decision is still unclear. Regardless of what the court decides, if Trump is re-elected in November, he may try to pardon himself. Donna?
All right, Neetu Garcha in Washington, thanks. There's another legal matter former President Donald Trump is facing, his criminal trial over hush money payments to an adult film star. We love Trump! Trump was cheered by supporters before heading into the courthouse. Former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker testified about catch-and-kill schemes to suppress negative stories about Trump. He said he paid to buy the story of former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who said she'd had an affair with Trump, and then killed the story months before the 2016 election. And he said he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars buying stories involving prominent people, such as Arnold Schwarzenegger and Tiger Woods. And he said he alerted Trump's lawyer when he heard Stormy Daniels was looking to tell her story about a sexual encounter with Trump in the weeks before the election. Pecker said he turned her down, but realized how damaging it could be and told Trump's lawyer he should buy it and take it off the market. A joint appeal to bring hostages home. Coming up, the international push for Hamas to free hostages ahead of an imminent Israeli offensive. Protests against Israel's siege on Gaza appear to be intensifying on U.S. college campuses. This is Emerson College in Boston. Police and protesters faced off there early this morning. More than 100 people were arrested. Officers were clearing a tent encampment that had been in place since the weekend. And in Austin, large crowds gathered for a second day at the University of Texas. About 30 people were arrested there yesterday. Demonstrators are asking their universities to cut ties with or reveal their involvement with companies that are doing business with Israel or profiting off the war in Gaza. In Gaza, there were more airstrikes on the southern city of Rafah today. At least 5 people there were killed, including a 7-year-old boy and his father, who was working for a Belgian aid agency. More than half of Gaza's 2.3 million people have sought refuge in Rafah, where Israel is conducting near daily raids as it prepares for a full-scale ground invasion. Canada, the U.S., and 16 other countries whose citizens were abducted by Hamas on October 7th issued a joint statement today. It says, "We call for the immediate release of all hostages held by Hamas in Gaza for over 200 days. It says, "We emphasize that the deal on the table to release the hostages will bring an immediate and prolonged ceasefire in Gaza that would facilitate a surge of additional necessary humanitarian assistance." As Mike Armstrong reports, every day without a ceasefire compounds the suffering for civilians in Gaza and families of the hostages.
I mean, initially, we were just crying.
That was the first reaction to seeing their son alive. The first proof of life for the parents of hostage Hersh Goldberg-Pollen came in a video released by Hamas.
Shalom.
They've given permission for media to use the video. In it, their son is missing a hand, but seeing him alive means there's hope.
He certainly doesn't look like himself, but it was amazing to see him and amazing to see that he speaks like himself with clarity and strength.
Families and friends of hostages protested Thursday outside Israel's military headquarters. The country's war cabinet was meeting inside, according to reports, discussing plans for a ground invasion of southern Gaza. Protesters want the focus instead on the hostages, people like this woman's father.
He's very funny and he's very lovable, and I miss his hug, I miss his advice. I miss him every day.
Israeli officials believe Hamas is still holding 133 hostages in Gaza. Some were freed in a November truce. Talks have continued on and off to at least get the sick, elderly, and injured out. Negotiators have met in Paris, Cairo, and Doha. A senior U.S. official said Thursday there may be an avenue to an agreement, but Israeli officials say they've been close with Hamas before.
They walk away from any potential deal.
The families of the hostages are praising the 18 countries that signed a joint appeal for Hamas to release their loved ones. Among those speaking Thursday, the parents of Hersh Goldberg-Pollen.
We are hopeful and prayerful that this is the beginning of a galvanizing force.
While the joint appeal does not appear to be having an impact on Hamas, a spokesman for the group says it will not be influenced by the statement and called on the U.S. to force Israel, quote, to end its aggression. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Moulin Rouge mishap ahead. What's missing from this Paris landmark? One of the most famous landmarks in Paris is a little worse for wear. The blades of the windmill on the Moulin Rouge Cabaret Club fell off overnight. The first three letters of the sign are missing too. Nobody was injured and there's no sign of vandalism. The owner says it will be repaired. The club has been a fixture of Parisian nightlife since it's opened in 1889, and it's known as the birthplace of the can-can dance. Two of those military horses that broke loose and galloped through London yesterday are in worse condition than first thought. The horses named Vita and Quaker are in serious condition. They were operated on last night. Quaker was later transferred to an equine hospital. They were taking part in routine exercise when they were spooked by construction noise, threw off their riders and took off, smashing into a taxi and breaking the windshield of a bus. 3 soldiers thrown off were hospitalized. They are expected to return to duty soon. The other horses involved are said to be recovering well.
Here's another shot. Anderson right in. He scored!
He was hockey's voice for more than 50 years. Next, remembering Bob Cole. They say no one called the game like Bob Cole. If you're Canadian and you love hockey, you don't need me to tell you who he was and why his mastery of play-by-play was legendary. Bob Cole died Wednesday night in St. John's, Newfoundland, surrounded by family. He was 90 years old. Mackenzie Gray looks at Cole's love for the game and how fans and players loved him right back.
Look at Lemieux! Oh my heavens! What a goal! What a move! Lemieux! Oh baby!
For over 50 years.
Oh my goodness! Here comes a shot! Scoot! How about that? Oh baby, for sure!
He was the soundtrack to Saturday night.
Coming after them. Albertson in again. Nearly got in. Scores! Albertson scores and the series is over!
Classic calls from Bob Cole, a little Newfoundlander with a big presence.
They're going home. They're going home. Yeah, they're going home.
From covering the Summit Series on radio.
Here's another shot, Henderson right in. He scores! Well, you know, Harry.
To decades as the lead voice for Hockey Night in Canada. Even the hockey greats knew that when Bob Cole called your game, it was a big deal.
So you knew that you're at the end of the line and playing for the championship when Bob was around. It was a special moment, and nobody did it better than Bob.
He's always said the only thing that's important is the Stanley Cup.
But in a career of calls, one stood above the rest for Cole.
The Salt Lake City Joe Sakic goal. The moment was big, and the U.S. was playing Canada, and Canada hasn't won a gold medal in 50 years, and here we are. And then Joe Sakic takes off, and I just was kind of with him.
For decades, Cole himself traveled around the continent to cover the game he loved, but he still lived in St. John's despite the extra travel.
And I don't think Bob Cole will overthrow this one.
He represented his home province as the skip for Newfoundland at the 1971 and 75 Canadian Men's Curling Championship. Despite honors like being named to the Order of Canada, Cole admitted he still got nervous before a game, something even his colleagues couldn't tell.
He never took it for granted. He never thought he was bigger than the game. He always saw himself as the conduit between the fan and the game. And he loved that role. It was very special to him.
But it's millions of Canadians who remember Bob Cole as a broadcasting legend and a special part of some of their favorite memories. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
Another one down. Good night, everybody.
That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is New Bonaventure, Newfoundland and Labrador. That's the Random Passage site there. I've been there, love it. Great, beautiful spot. Go visit if you can. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.